All right, back on the KFYR Plus news desk here this morning, and joining us is Steve Cotton, a veteran financial strategist with 48 years of spanning investments, business, government, and public affairs, to analyze President Trump's address Wednesday night, the Iran conflict's economic stakes, and oil markets in the Strait of Hormuz, and of course the shifting public approval trends that are happening. Steve, welcome back to the news desk. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
You got it. So, Steve, from a strategist perspective, what stood out to you most in President Trump's address on Wednesday night?
Well, the president emphasized the military aspect of this and really has downplayed the second part of this, which is the political aspect. In my strategic opinion, if we don't achieve regime change sooner or later, this has all been a failure, a massive failure. The Israelis know that we have to have regime change. We can't keep negotiating with the Iranians about whether they're going to close the Strait of Hormuz or threaten all their neighbors for the next 5-10 years. We can't do that. I think the president understands the challenge of regime change and that the Iranian people have not yet risen up and that the IRGC is still out there and moving around and armed. And I believe he realizes the difficulty of it, and he's downplayed that a little bit, but that's really the longer pole in the tent. And if we can accomplish that with the Israelis and our allies, then he can set the stage for the longest peacetime economic expansion and progress in the Middle East in that region's history of the world.
From your perspective, do you think the speech calmed the situation, or did it raise more questions, or did it make it more volatile?
Well, I think he sent mixed signals. On the one hand, he said we're almost done. We've almost accomplished our objectives. And on the other hand, he says we're going to double down and hit them even harder if they don't capitulate. The Iranians and the IRGC, they are rabid ideologues. I do not expect them to capitulate. This is not like Japan or Germany in 1945. This is a very different breed of cat. They are ideologues, and they know this is about their survival. And I don't believe they're going to surrender in the classic sense. I believe that they and the Iranian people are going to have to clash before this thing is resolved, and it's got to be resolved in a way that eliminates this regime permanently.
Do you feel that it's got to be a diplomatic resolution, or do you think, as President Trump says, that we can just go in and fire bombs and put boots on the ground and take over the country, or do you feel better for a diplomatic resolution?
Well, I liken a diplomatic resolution, and the people of North Dakota will understand this analogy. A diplomatic resolution is like hitting a rattlesnake on the head with a shovel, and you stun it, but it continues to live and may preposition or reposition to bite you later. I don't believe a diplomatic solution is going to be the answer. I think elimination of the regime has got to be the answer for the sake of everybody in the region, including all the Arab states. And I think we've got to reopen the Strait of Hormuz with or without our allies. The allies and NATO has been feckless in this situation. But I don't think the president's speech, as good as it was, really explained the full gamut of the problems and the issue to the American people. He continues to focus on the military solution, and that's, as strange as it may sound, that's the easy part. The harder part is regime change. The Israelis know that, the Arabs know that, but that has got to be the answer, or all of this has been a waste of blood and treasure.
Yeah, we're no stranger to Middle Eastern conflicts, Steve. How do markets typically react to open-ended conflicts?
Not well. Markets hate uncertainty. The part of the issue of the closure of the strait is the insurance companies like Lloyd's of London's perception of the risk as opposed to the real military risk. Now, Iran is a large and deep country. They can still fire off an occasional missile or an occasional drone. They can potentially be resupplied by the Russians, and the Russians are sending in aid. And, so even as we destroy their stockpiles and their launchers, there's always the potential that that some resupply can be used by the IRGC, and markets do not like that. They do not like prolonged uncertainty. Investors tend to be cautious. They tend to go to cash. I think long term that's not going to be necessary, but I think we're in for some more volatility, and I do not expect this to be over very quickly.
Why are some energy and security experts skeptical about a quick reopening of the strait?
Well, it's a multifaceted problem. In addition to the timidity of the insurance companies, uh, the Iranians have been known to place mines on the seafloor,
Hmm.
and we've been working to detect those and remove them as fast as we can. But there is some uncertainty still about the extent to which the strait has been mined. Either, have we missed anything? And all they have to do to chill the situation is fire off one drone or one missile that hits one tanker. And then the perception is, well, the strait is just too hazardous. So it's a technical problem, it's a military problem. More than anything, it's a political perception problem. And the markets don't like that. And that's why oil prices have spiked. Now, I have seen a report that says that oil prices would have to be about $150 a barrel for a sustained 3 month period of time before it would cause serious damage to the United States
Hmm.
economy. I think that's fairly accurate, but this prolonged period of uncertainty is not helpful.
I read last night Brent crude hit 140. Is that right?
Yes, it's been spiking up and then it'll come back. And I think Trump has been trying to speak to the markets, the oil markets, been trying to speak to our allies in the region as much as he has the American people. He's been trying to speak to the Iranians as well. But Trump is a very shrewd negotiator. And I think he knows these militant radicals are not going to be easily moved. And I think if you ask the Israelis would say they have to be eliminated. You can't negotiate with them. And historically, that's been true.
Steve, how long before we really start worrying if this Strait of Hormuz is closed? Are we looking, June? Is that a timeline where, listen, things are bad by June or July? Or are we thinking toward the end of summer that we're hitting a recession?
Well, I think the answer to that you've asked a technical economic question, and I think the study that's saying that we'd have to have a protracted 3 month period of elevated oil prices, I believe that's probably pretty accurate. I don't
Hmm.
expect this thing to go to the end of summer. I don't expect this thing to go into very far into June necessarily. The Allies and the Chinese and the Indians and the Japanese and our Asian allies cannot afford for this strait to be closed. They get 80% of their oil through that strait.
Hmm.
And I'm surprised that NATO has been so feckless in coming to aid the reopening. Um, Trump has said he's not going to do this unilaterally. They're going to have to, they have more at stake and they need to get in the game. And he's exactly right about that. Um, the allies have their own domestic constituencies, but I really think this is going to be resolved in terms of the strait and safe
Hmm.
passage. I think that's going to be resolved fairly soon because I think everybody understands the devastating effect that prolonged oil prices have on economies, and the other economies are less durable than ours is. So I really think that this is going to be resolved by the end of May at the very latest, possibly sooner. But it's partly a technical problem and partly a political problem. The political problem may run a while, may run 4 more
Yeah.
weeks.
I just want to touch on one thing that you mentioned. NATO, they are standing back on this one. Would it have been a smart decision on this administration's part to consult NATO, some of our allies, before going in? They're sitting back and saying this is not our war, and as you said, it directly affects them, a lot of them, as far as what they're getting for oil. Should he have consulted NATO?
Well, I think the president wanted to achieve strategic military surprise, and he was right to do so. you can't consult the NATO allies on something like this. You can't say an attack is imminent without it leaking. There are all kinds of pro-Iranian uh, people in these allied administrations and governments that would have been glad to call Tehran and leak that. I think the president handled this properly. He consulted with the Congress, but again, he didn't tell them, the hour and the day. And I think he was
Hmm.
right to do so. But I think the allies are trying to find a convenient excuse for not getting involved, and it's in their own interest. And I think what they've done is they've damaged NATO and NATO's relationship with the United States. And I will tell you that is absolutely not in their best interest with a resurgent Russia. And so they may feel caught between a rock and a hard place, but NATO has never been known for its courage.
Yeah. Reuters and Ipsos shows declining approval on both the presidency and the economy. Steve, how closely do these markets track public sentiment?
Well, these are the same polls that predicted 85% chance that Hillary Clinton would be elected president. And so I take them all with a grain of salt. But with the rise of now, unemployment just ticked back from 4.4 to about 4.3. We got an especially strong jobs report just
Hmm.
yesterday or this morning. Three times as many jobs were generated as was anticipated. The economy continues to be resilient, but there are pockets of inflated costs. People are nervous. Um, I think the reduction in the president's popularity, while I would take it with a grain of salt, I think is a pink flag that the Republicans have to pay attention to. The Democrats think they're just going to coast into the midterms. I don't believe that's necessarily the case either. They continue to be on the wrong side of a lot of these political and military issues, and but it's a time of uncertainty, and that doesn't benefit the incumbent party ever.
Does the falling confidence complicate foreign policy decision making from an economic standpoint?
Well, it can certainly complicate it from a political standpoint. It definitely complicates it, but I've never seen a conflict yet that didn't complicate domestic politics in this country and politics overseas. You've got huge Muslim populations in France and now in Britain. Both governments are acutely aware of that, and they've trimmed their sails a little bit. That's part of their reluctance to get involved in this. I think that is, I think that is a wrong calculation, but um, but it does get more complex politically. You're exactly right. Economically, yes, it makes the uncertainty makes it more complex. I don't believe this is a long-term issue, though. I believe
Hmm.
this is going to be resolved, certainly militarily in the near term, and politically, it may actually be resolved sooner if the Israelis can equip the pro-Western forces in Iran that want to rise up and take back their country, and if they can isolate and eliminate the IRGC and Basenji forces, there's even the possibility of a split between the IRGC and the regular Iranian military. They have always had conflicts. The regular
Hmm.
Iranian military is not trusted by the IRGC, and that may be the fulcrum upon which the Iranian people ally and turn and take back their government. There is that possibility. So, but it's not obvious right now that they're rising up yet.
That's a good point. Steve, what signals are you watching to see if the economy gets worse?
I think you have to watch unemployment. You have to watch the inflation rate. I think you have to watch the Federal Reserve's reaction to both of those. I think you have to watch consumer sentiment, and I think you have to be alert to sentiment in the Congress and in the Republican ranks as well. All of those things can still deteriorate, but I think in this kind of a crisis, this is very much like 1939 when we were watching the Nazis rise in Europe, and there were a lot of American isolationists back then that said it's not our war, not our problem. We can't afford to get involved, and we very nearly lost Britain and Western civilization because of political timidity. We need to
Hmm.
learn lessons from history, and we need to be resolute against evil and stand strong. That's my personal opinion and my strategic analyst opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. History does point to that, Steve. But I think the American sentiment has seen, our American soldiers in the Middle East for 20 some odd years. And, it's one of those here we go again moments, right?
I don't think that's true. I think President Trump is very cognizant of, he's been very critical of the Iraq and the Afghan operations and how those were run over the years. I think he is not interested in getting bogged down in a land war in Iran. I think we have other options. We've got special operations options. We
Hmm.
can seize Karg Island, but that has military issues associated with that. We can take control of the Iranian oil supply, but I do not think this president's going to get bogged down in a land situation in Iran, even if we run some special forces missions for very discrete special purposes. We can do that, but I do not see a prolonged land situation in terms of American troops. I think the president has learned from history, and others advising him have as well. I just don't, I think it's premature to project that kind of a scenario.
Anything worry you right now?
I worry about the Russians resupplying the Iranians with drones. It's easier to do that than to resupply them with missiles or missile launchers. I worry about the IRGC becoming really even more entrenched. I worry about the Iranian people failing to rise up to take their country back. Uh,
Hmm.
at the end of the day, this is going to be about the Iranian people, and the president and Israel has given them a chance to take their country back. And if they don't seize it, that will not be our fault. That'll be on them.
Biggest risk if this war continues, Steve?
I think political deterioration in support for the president. I think you can see a perception that American firepower, as effective and powerful as it is, cannot resolve all political issues. Uh, if we don't see regime change after this, in my opinion, the mission has failed.
Yeah. Your gut feeling? Where does this go?
I think it's going to be very, very hard to achieve regime change because at the end of the day, it's about politics on the ground in Iran. And I think the Israelis are going to be very good at equipping the pro-Western Iranian nationalists to take their country back. I think that's something I'm not sure we can help much with that. We can help by seizing Karg Island, cutting off the Iranian oil flow. You'll notice the president has not destroyed the Iranian oil fields. I think
Hmm.
that is exactly because he wants to save that for a pro-Western Iranian government. He also doesn't want to take that supply off the global market. But I worry about the internal Iranian political situation more than anything else. I think that's the X factor and is going to tilt this either way. And right now, I don't know which way it's going to go. I don't know anybody does.
Yeah, it's, I guess, maybe a bit of a quagmire. Just one more question for you. When you say regime change, now there has been a change. We took out Ayatollah Khomeini, I guess the father. Son is now in that spot. Are you okay with that change, or are you thinking somebody else other than Khomeini number two?
Well, the previous Khomeini that had been in power for 40 plus years did not really want his son to take over. He's got a number of flaws according to their political and ideological and religious perspective. He is a figurehead. He was allowed to take that position by the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. The Iranians have deliberately decentralized their command and control, and so, because they anticipated the possibility of a leadership decapitation, and I think they are hunkered down. They are hardcore idealists. Uh, there aren't any moderates in the IRGC. There
Mm-mm.
might be some people in the Iranian army, the regular forces, that would ally with the people. And I think that's the big break that we need to be watching. But I think there's going to be a civil war in Iran. There's got to be to resolve this. I don't think we can unilaterally determine the outcome. I don't think the Iranians can either necessarily. I think the Iranian people, I mean, I don't think the Israelis can, is what I meant. I think you're going to have to see the Iranian people rise up, take their government back. And that's going to be a tall order, but they've got to do it because those are the only people who can resolve this situation to the benefit of the world. And I think there are forces that want to do that. But I just think the jury's still out on whether that will happen in a reasonable time frame.
All right, Steve Cotton, we'll have to leave it there. Steve, thank you so much helping us break this down. We appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me.